Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Share Views, episode 4, a special on cybersecurity, and I'm surrounded by experts in the area. Jay Abbott, Managing Director of Falanx Cyber Defense, which sounds like something out of Star Wars. John Blamire, Chief Executive of Falanx Group, and Howie Lee, Executive Director and Co-Head of Canvas ETF Securities. How are you today, gentlemen?
Oh, very good.
Very well.
You're bearing up under the severe heat of the London summer? Right. First question from me, cybersecurity, I think I ask a layperson's question because I'm just an ordinary person in the street. It was big maybe a few years ago, 3-4 years ago, maybe the start of the decade. And that's when, probably the average person in the street with a PC was attacked the most. How's the situation changed and how's the business changed since then? Maybe Jay.
Sure. So I guess it's always been there. It's always been a problem. It's just become more of a publicly known or understood issue over time. I've been doing this for over 20 years now, and all I have seen is the problem escalate. Now, we've got better at trying to solve the problem. We've got better at trying to find the bad guys and help defend people, the end users and corporations alike. But the reality is it's only getting worse out there. It is a very easy way, if you are a person of that certain inclination, to make a vast amount of money to perform negative acts using computers.
Right, I mean, I, on a daily basis, several times a day I'm getting phishing attempts on my Hotmail or bank accounts or sending people to pretend to send money to you and stuff like that. There's nothing you can do about that, is there? That's going on forever. And the arising from that as well, I mean, no system is perfect. You're always going to be hacked, whether you're the Pentagon or the KGB or whoever. And so how much can you actually do to defend people's computers, people's businesses?
Quite a lot, really. The reality of this is that it's the 80-20 rule, really. Most people don't do anything about security, so they're very easy to be attacked and they're very vulnerable as a result. But actually, if you do a small amount rather than a massive amount, just even start to get your head around the subject and start to put the relevant defenses in place, you become far, far more difficult to actually become a victim. And as a direct result of that, the criminals typically move on.
And maybe the devil's advocate question, which suits my personality, is one of those situations, it seems, where some people would rather lose everything, or lose, a novel they've been working on for 2 years, rather than protect their computer properly or protect their business properly. There's a meanness out there in this area where, with the internet, people want everything for free, and they don't want to spend any money. They'd rather, go down rather than spend money. Have you seen that type of resistance to what you do?
Yeah, I guess the resistance I've seen over the last 20 years or so has been governed by a number of variables. It can be age-related. If you haven't grown up around the information age, around technology, then actually your reliance upon it and your understanding of it, and therefore, if you like, commitment to information stored upon it, is entirely different to someone who's grown up in that environment and lives and breathes by it. So we've seen sort of variances based on who you are, where you are, how you use those computers. So different people have sort of different levels of commitment and therefore understanding of the problem. But I think over recent years, those boundaries have started to be transcended, and we're starting to see pretty much everyone getting their head around the fact that, it's not just I'm going to lose a couple of years worth of work. It could actually be some severe financial impact to you as an individual.
I think it's a good time to bring in John Blamire, speaking of the financial aspects of cybersecurity, Chief Executive of Falanx Group. I've interviewed you a couple of times, 2 or 3 times over the last couple of years, and the stock market, I think initially, you were a go-go stock, bulletin board hero. The perception maybe since then has changed. Is that because people don't understand the business, they don't understand what you're doing, or have you changed the business? What's happened there?
Phalanx Group as a group of businesses has significantly changed very much so in the last 12 to 18 months. What we've been endeavouring to do is get that message out to the market, to inform people as to what we actually have been doing. We started out as very much a general security consultancy. We were very, very profitable, running a number of large contracts out in the Middle East, and I think the retail market got very much attracted to that as part of the increase in our share price circa 2014, which was...
Maybe carried away?
It was astronomical,
right.
and it was, to be very brutally honest, it was sitting up there on an awful lot of thin air. there wasn't quite the understanding around what we were and what we were looking to build over the next couple of years. That's now happened. We've taken an awful lot of capital and invested in our cybersecurity. We've transitioned from being a general security consultancy to being very much more specialist, very much more focused organisation. We've put down that general consultancy arm. We will be building something new in its place over time, but our focus is very much in cybersecurity. And one has to bear in mind it's the hot market.
So basically before, or initially, you were telling customers or advising them on where to go to be best protected in the market, or sorry, as far as their hardware or software or is concerned, and then but now what you actually provide that security yourself.
We do.
So you were the middleman before, now you're actually the service
Now we
provider.
are providing that service. And we've taken the view, and it's a view that we share across the company, that the best way to deliver cybersecurity is a service. It transcends the point solution sort of themology of an awful lot of stocks out there. And because you're delivering a service and you have that very, very close relationship with the client, whatever is in vogue, you can bolt onto that platform, you can take it off that platform, you can continue to deliver a service to your clients, which is very much at the cutting edge, and is reliable, is cost effective, and allows them to get on with their business without recruiting an army of IT specialists.
So is there any consultancy left at all? I mean, if I come to you and say I've got a small recording studio which has got all this and all that on it, and I want it to be protected, would you advise either your own services or others, or is it just your own?
It's very much our own, and Jay has developed a team very much focused on doing that front-end consultancy. It's at the cutting edge of our business model. And yes, we do continue to deliver consultancy, but it's very much focused on cybersecurity.
Right. And is that where the money is? That's where the margins are, as compared to consultancy, or is it just a different, you're not comparing like with like?
It's not where the largest part of our margin is. You would consider consultancy would generate around about 30% net margin. Where it really starts to grow is in the assessment part of our business model, which more like sort of 50 to 60%, in some cases higher. And the monitoring component, which is effectively creating that ongoing 24/7 service to monitor and protect a client's network or environment, that again is 50 plus margin.
All right, let's bring in Howard Lee, Executive Director and Co-Head of Canvas ETF Securities at this point. The marketplace, how big is the marketplace and how much is in it for investors?
Well, if you kind of look at where the market is at the moment, it is in a phase where there's a lot of growth that's happening. Roughly, you can look at, say, a 10% compound annual growth rate over the next 3 to 4 years. So up until 2020, this is going to be a $170 billion business. So that's a very important fact.
That's the cake that you're trying to get a slice out of at Falanx, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we obviously just have an investment product that provides exposure to cybersecurity space, and we've been following it for quite some time, and we very much believe in it. If you look at the amount of money that cybersecurity attacks cost, it's roughly about $400 billion a year. And if you also look at how much, in terms of the number of attacks that are happening, it's increasing 66% every year. And those are significant numbers. And individuals, companies, as well as governments need to be protected.
So it's all about cyber defense. That's the main theme?
Cyber defense. I mean, if you look at our identity and our existence, what we do at work from day to day, that's all online. Sometimes it's clouded. Governments, it's the same thing. And us as individuals, I wouldn't say I'm the most tech savvy person, but I've got a smartphone. I've got quite a few apps on there, including payment apps. And I would do quite a lot to protect my personal identity there.
So I think payment seems to be the most difficult area. So even if you don't care about your computer being hacked, it's the payment side on the apps and that day-to-day activity, which the contactless and all the other things. I mean, maybe that's not related, but could you explain to us how that's developing and how that's growing?
Yeah, it's not just the payment side of it. It's essentially any service that can be leveraged So if you think about it, you as an individual, you have an identity. That identity has a credit profile. That credit profile has an ability to access money. You have savings. All of that is essentially an asset that can be leveraged by someone for their own means and taken away from you. And all they may need to do that is gain access to your computer and access some personal records. Maybe you've got a copy of your driver's license on there you scanned in to send someone, your passport. These are all quite normal things a consumer would do. So actually it's quite easy to defraud an individual when it comes to cybersecurity, because so much, as has been said, is actually stored digitally. And those assets aren't necessarily protected, both on a consumer system, but also in a business context. So when you scale that up and you start talking about companies, well, if you're a company that's a business-to-consumer organization, and you've got maybe several hundreds of thousands of consumers that you're working with, you know, you're protecting their data at mass scale. So now, from a target perspective, well, you're a much higher value target, because if I hack a single consumer, I get one identity. If I hack a bank, I get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of identities, and direct access to funds more often than not. So, you know, that makes them a higher target. But how do you go about doing that? Well, sometimes it's very hard to hack a bank, and it's easier just to hack 100,000 people. So there's lots of different strategies at play, but it ultimately comes down to the ability to make money. And there are several different ways to make money in cybersecurity. So it is very easy
Let's just have a look at the first slide, because maybe that'll enlighten us a bit more. The cyber defense business model. So the consultation, that's how you started.
No, yeah, so if I walk you through this, so just to clarify a point as well, the consultation business that the company used to have isn't the same as the consultation business we have now. So we do cybersecurity consultancy. So the best way of thinking about this is, as you mentioned yourself, you've got a nice little recording studio, you've got a business that has an entity, but you don't have a full and complete grasp of cybersecurity because you haven't worked in the industry for 20 years. I do, but I also know nothing about recording studios. But together, we could probably figure out the right solution for you. So that's how we work, consulting, hand in hand, trying to figure out exactly what the problem is, how does that relate to you, what do you really need to spend on it to be secure, to be good enough at security so that you are not a victim, okay?
That's the other thing, I mean, do people necessarily know? I mean, I might not think that I require services, but how are you able to educate people that they might do that? And how do you market yourself?
There's lots of different ways. I mean, the majority of marketing work that I'm involved with is public speaking, education. I do a lot of webcasts. I do a lot of conferences. I speak regularly. These are opportunities to educate business owners, to educate those in the financial services sector, all sorts of sectors that perhaps there is a problem they really do need to consider. Typically, once we've had a conversation for half an hour, you're more than willing to hear what I have to say and are open to fixing a problem perhaps you didn't think existed beforehand. Not that I'm here selling fear, uncertainty and doubt by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, that worked well.
More enlightening than otherwise, although people do often say that it sounds scary afterwards.
Right.
But yeah, so you know, we have to understand what the problem is, and your problem isn't necessarily the problem another company serves or has. It's very much a case of it's an entirely bespoke service. It's a bespoke issue. Cyber for you isn't the same as cyber for a bank, nor is it the same as cyber for a utilities company. Everyone has their own niche, their own set of requirements, their own set of issues that we have to figure out. So once we've done that, then we can move on to help you actually understand what the vulnerabilities are. How is the technology you use on a daily basis allowing exposures to occur that could cause you a problem? And that's the assessment phase. So this is all sorts of weird and wacky technical stuff. Yeah. Penetration testing, red teaming, tiger teaming, terms that sound crazy but are ultimately us simulating exactly what a hacker would do and exactly how they would hack into you and executing those attacks against you, but not actually following through and walking away with the crown jewels. Once we do that, we can prove the issues. We can then tell you exactly how to fix those issues. So back into the consulting piece. And then what happens is, once we've helped you sort of become more secure, increase your maturity, then the monitoring solution comes into play, and we deploy technology into your environment, both software and hardware, that we manage from our 24/7, 365 security operations center, where we've got real people with the skills in the industry sat there monitoring every day, looking for signs of a cyber attack into or against your organization. That means we see the issues that you would not see normally, And we're able then to instantiate our incident response capability, and actually, rather than phone you up and say, by the way, looks like all of your information assets are walking out the door, we can have that conversation where we're saying, we've started to defend your organization for you, and our guys are in a car on the way to you right now, and they'll be there in 2 hours. Can you please open the door for them so they can come in and start securing your systems physically? So that's the service. That's the end-to-end service offering, and that's what makes us not necessarily unique, but it makes us exactly what this market needs.
Okay, let's just go on to the next slide here. Cybersecurity shares. What's this telling us?
Well, I suppose this is one of the companies which, in our investment product, the cybersecurity index, it's one of the constituents. So Sophos is obviously a UK-based company. A lot of the cybersecurity listed companies, the larger ones, tend to be based in the US, but of course Falanx is an example of a growing industry here in the UK itself. What you probably see here on this chart is that this period is actually just a quick snapshot. Yeah. But if we actually look at what's been happening just in the general equities market over the last, say, 8 months or so, equities as a whole has taken a little bit of a toll, and tech stocks per se have also felt that same problem. But that being said, there's been a pretty big recovery since then at the beginning of the year. If you look at across the index itself, and our index has got 33 companies in it, a lot of the recovery has actually happened in the last 6 months. So
you think there's a structural turnaround in the cybersecurity?
There absolutely is, and actually 2016 is a very important year. So there is this thing called the hype phase that perhaps took place about 2 years ago, when a lot of people were just buying cybersecurity stocks, and the valuations, which are actually pretty high, close to about 60 times price earnings. At the start of the year, it was sitting around 53. We're now sitting about 42. Now, 42 times earnings might seem high compared to other tech stocks, but you look at what the kind of performance is generated in the last 6 months. Over 15% on that index in the last 6 months. In the last 3 months, it's been close to 10%. And actually, what the interesting fact here is the revenues from these 33 companies has actually been increasing. It's been up 23%. But then you look at the wider tech sector, the revenues themselves in that sector are down about 3.5% year to date. So there's this very important metric as to what's happening with valuations, the fact that there's more earnings going to cybersecurity, and there's no doubt, and I'm sure Falanx will be very much part of this. There is increased investment going into protecting yourselves over, around cybersecurity. The prediction in terms of how much is going to be invested on an annual basis is going to be close to $98 billion come 2019.
Well, alas, gentlemen, that we've been hacked on time. I don't think there's anything you can do about that. Jay Abbott, John Blamire, and Howie Lee, thank you very much for this cybersecurity special on ShareViews.